Hey folks, we're back to section 8.1, yet another video dealing with the ambiguous triangle. The last video we talked about option number 1 here, where we have no triangle. Let's look at option number 2. If the sine of angle B is equal to 1, then there's only going to be one triangle. And not only that, angle B is going to be a 90-degree angle. I did not actually show you any examples of this. This is, you know how to solve right triangles. And so you could either use the law of sines or you can use SOHCAHTOA as you would have back in chapter 5. So I did not show any specific examples for this one. Let's look at condition number 3. Number 3 is where when I find the sine of angle B, it lands in a good place. It lands between 0 and 1. And what's going to happen is that is going to tell me I either have one triangle or I could have two triangles to satisfy the given conditions. So here's how I'm going to go about figuring out if it's one or two triangles. First thing is, let's go find out what angle B is. We understand that inverses find angles, so if I want to find angle B, I'm going to use the inverse. Now, I need to pause here for just a moment to remind you about sine inverse. So what I have here is I have a unit circle, a miniature version of the unit circle, and on this circle I've just chosen a 32-degree angle. Now we understand that the sine of any angle on the unit circle is going to be my y value. And so whatever that y value is, and I don't know, I specifically chose something I wouldn't know, whatever that y value is going to be my sine value. Now, here's the thing. There's another angle that has the exact same sine value, and that one is 32 degrees away from the 180-degree mark. And so what we would need to do to find out, we understand that one of our angles is this 32-degree angle, but then another angle is going to go from here to here. And the way that I would find out what that angle is to do 180 minus 32 degrees. And that's going to give me that green angle there. All right, so what I say next is going to deal heavily with anytime you use a sine inverse, you need to consider that there might be two possibilities. All right, so let's take a look then at what that looks like. So again, for part A, if I'm going to use that sine inverse, I need to remember that sine inverse could cause two possibilities. Now, if it is going to cause two possibilities, how will I find the second possibility? Well, first of all, let's just use 180 minus the angle that I found. And so that's this concept right here. This is figuring that there might be that second possibility. That's going to be a supplement. Once I find out this angle B2, then I can solve for angles C1 and C2. If C2 makes sense, there's going to be two triangles. If C2 doesn't make sense, if it's negative, then there was only one triangle. And again, I'm going to show you examples of both of these. So if you would please, I know I haven't done example 5, but if you would, skip down to example number 6. I want to do example 6 first, and then I'll come back and do example number 5. So as we look at this particular example, you'll notice that I've already set up my chart. I've taken my given information here, and my chart is completely set up. And what I have in the margin is I have some steps to take. And basically the steps kind of follow the gray box that we just went through. All right, so here's the first thing. As you look at my chart, you can tell, yeah, I need to find angle A first. Okay, so let's go through the work for that. Finding angle A, we're going to use the law of sines. Let's isolate the sine of angle A. I plug that into my calculator. I get a good value, and so then I'd use sine inverse. And when I use sine inverse, I'm going to get this 45.96 number. Now, you want to make sure that you store this in your calculator. If you need a video on storing and you can't find it in the videos that I've provided in my lab math, please reach out to me and I can send you a link to the video on how to store in your calculator. or you can just Google it. It's pretty easy. All right, so make sure that you store this number in your calculator. Let me go ahead and put this in my chart. And remember that I'm using significant figures here, which is why I rounded to the nearest 10th place, because my other angle was rounded to the nearest 10th place. All right, now let's assume, because of the fact that I use sine inverse, let's assume that there is a second angle A. So let's go find angle A2. And we understand that we do that by using supplementary angles. So I'm just going to take 180 minus A1, which I'm calling this guy here A1. I'm using what was in my calculator, stored in my calculator, and I'm going to get this 134.03 number. Now, I didn't write it down up in a chart because I first want to see if it even is possible that this is a second case. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go find angles C1 and potentially C2 if there is a second triangle. It's pretty easy to see that if I want to find angle C, all I have to do is subtract these two from 180 to get angle C. So let's do that next. Let's find angle C1. So this is where I'm going to take 180 minus angle A1 that I just found minus the angle B that I was handed. And so that's going to give me that 65 degree angle, 65.3 when I round. Okay, let's go find angle C2 doing the same thing. Now, I didn't write this down, and that might be a little confusing. So let me just write this down real quick. We have that A2 is 134.0. B, I was already given at 68.7. So let's look for C2 then. And so C2, we're going to do again 180 minus A2 minus angle B. Whoa, wait a second. I'm getting a negative angle. Well, there's no way in my triangle I can have a negative angle. So then what we find is that there is no second case. There is no angle A2. There is no angle C2. There is no second case here because I can't have a negative angle. So we've only got one triangle in this particular option. All right, the last thing we need to do is find side C. You look at your chart, you've got plenty of information now to be able to find side C. So let's set up the law of sines. Here, notice that we are using the B fraction and the C fraction. One comment before I uncover the rest of this is that when you use angle C, make sure, and I didn't write this down, so this is my fault, but make sure that you store this, so that you are using the whole entire string of decimals and not just a rounded version. If you use a rounded version, it will give you the wrong answer in the long run. All right, let's go ahead then. Isolate C, throw that into the calculator. We'll get 24.77 number, and we'll write this in rounded to the nearest 10th as our significant figures. All right, now I'm going to go back and I'm going to do example 5, but I'm going to put it in its own video because it's the 2 solution case. And in my opinion, it's probably the hardest of all of the ambiguous options. So I'm going to give it its own video. So hang tight.